The shocking detail about the death of 95-year-old Gene Hackman will totally leave you speechless, as detectives have found something that you may not even imagine. It's a story that has rattled Hollywood to its core, leaving friends, fans, and law enforcement officials alike desperate for answers. How could one of the world's most iconic actors, renowned for his unforgettable performances in The French Connection, Unforgiven, Superman, and so many other classics, pass away under circumstances so peculiar and baffling that even seasoned investigators are left scratching their heads? And what about the clues left behind in that sprawling Albuquerque home? Although authorities have yet to confirm many of the key details, a tapestry of clues, rumors, and half-truths has already begun to spread far and wide. From scattered prescription pills to the inexplicable survival of two dogs while a third lay deceased, every new piece of information seems to deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. Now, in this expanded, deep dive spanning 4,000 words, we'll scrutinize every nook and cranny of this strange, unsettling event. We'll look at how Gene Hackman's storied life led him here, the final days before his death, the medical evidence under analysis, the potential for foul play or tragic accident, and the swirl of theories suggested by experts and armchair detectives alike. When the world heard news that Gene Hackman had been found dead, the immediate reaction was disbelief. Fans across the globe recalled his powerful on-screen presence, a man who won 2 Academy Awards for masterful portrayals, a legend whose characters resonated on personal and universal levels. From Popeye Doyle in The French Connection to Little Bill Daggett in Unforgiven, Hackman had not only given audiences countless memorable lines, but also changed the very landscape of American cinema. As the shock gave way to grief, fresh layers of confusion began to swirl. Reports said he had been 95, an advanced age by any standard. Yet the nature of his passing could hardly be chalked up to simple, peaceful old age. He was discovered alongside his wife, whose lifeless body was found not far away, and one of their beloved dogs, also deceased. Many had assumed that if Hackman were to pass at an advanced age, it would happen under serene circumstances, perhaps in a hospital bed surrounded by loved ones. Instead, the rumors and early evidence pointed to something far stranger. Authorities suggested the bodies might have lain there for days, possibly weeks, unnoticed in the house they shared. The official statements from Sheriff Mendoza in Albuquerque described a grim scene. No immediate signs of forced entry or violence, but enough oddities to raise everyone's suspicions. Even for those who accepted the possibility of natural causes, the bizarre condition of the bodies and the seeming lack of any alarm or distress call made the entire situation deeply perplexing. Hackman's home in Albuquerque was not commonly publicized or frequented by paparazzi. Situated in a serene suburban environment, it offered the privacy the actor so deeply cherished in his later years. It was neither the grandiose Beverly Hills mansion that some stars favor, nor an isolated desert outpost reminiscent of Western films. Instead, it was a relatively unassuming estate that maintained modern amenities while allowing the couple to remain close to essential services like grocery stores, medical centers, and community gatherings. Neighbors rarely saw anything out of the ordinary. A few recalled glimpses of the tall, aging actor taking a morning stroll with his dogs, or occasionally driving to pick up household necessities. Some neighbors, speaking under anonymity, mentioned that Hackman was always pleasant if distant. He would wave hello, sometimes strike up a brief chat about the weather or local events, then carry on with his routine. No one interviewed mentioned any activity that would suggest trouble or conflict. In fact, most locals had no idea they shared the area with a world-famous actor. His presence, though noted by a few, did not become an object of local fascination. Law enforcement officials, upon responding to the welfare check request, found that the house's exterior was well maintained. The lawn was kept tidy, windows were intact, and doors appeared locked. However, the mailbox had been collecting letters and flyers for several days at least. There were no signs of break-ins or vandalism. All of that only escalated the confusion once the grim discovery was made. If there was foul play, how did the perpetrators leave no trace? If it was a natural death, why had no one heard any cries for help or noticed any signs of crisis? That fundamental question, how two individuals and a dog could die with no one the wiser for so long, became one of the many mystifying aspects of the case. Inside, the decor was said to be minimalist but elegant, replete with mementos from Hackman's storied career. Posters, scripts, and awards likely lined the walls and shelves, testifying to decades of cinematic triumph. Yet none of these personal touches pointed to the dread that would unfold there. According to initial reports, the main living area was undisturbed, with no broken furniture or overturned objects that might suggest a struggle. Some investigators commented on an eerie calm that enveloped the scene, as if time had simply halted at an unspecified moment. That quiet sense of normalcy contrasted sharply with the shocking reality of what had actually transpired inside those walls. Sheriff Mendoza's press conference jolted the public. He stated that the bodies, including the dogs, might have been in the house for up to 2 weeks. While advanced decomposition can complicate even an experienced investigator's ability to pinpoint time of death, certain environmental factors can accelerate or slow decay. Albuquerque's climate, often arid, could contribute to a mummification-like effect, making it even more difficult for the medical examiner to establish precise timelines. The manner in which the bodies were found deepened the puzzle. Hackman's body was near the kitchen, suggesting he might have been on his way to or from some routine activity, perhaps getting water, taking medication, or stepping out for some reason. Officials noted that his sunglasses were found on the floor beside him. This subtle detail hints that he may have collapsed abruptly. Typically, an older individual might not wear sunglasses indoors unless preparing to go outside or coming in from outdoors. It also raised the question of whether he intended to leave the house at that moment, or if it was just a personal quirk. The position of his limbs and torso might offer further insights into whether he fell forward or backward, but authorities have not released that level of specificity. In a separate area of the house, presumably the bathroom, Hackman's wife was discovered in an equally perplexing situation. Pills were scattered around her, as if she had either dropped them in the process of taking them or, more ominously, spilled them in a moment of panic or despair. This scene naturally invited a range of speculation: a suicide attempt, an accidental overdose, or perhaps a frantic response to seeing her husband in crisis. Investigators confiscated various prescription bottles from the bathroom, kitchen counters, and bedroom nightstands to piece together the puzzle. Thyroid medication, blood pressure medication, and common over-the-counter painkillers like Tylenol were among the items reported. Then there was the dog. While initial speculation pointed to carbon monoxide poisoning, subsequent checks by the gas company yielded negative results for leaks. If lethal gases were involved, something else must account for the survival of the other two dogs found alive on the property. Could it be that the dog's death was caused by ingesting pills or some toxic substance? Or did it succumb to another factor like old age or an unrelated condition? These intersecting questions set the stage for a deeply complicated investigation, one that many predicted would hinge on toxicology reports. When multiple family members are found dead in a closed environment, carbon monoxide poisoning is often the first theory. Carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and notoriously lethal. It kills hundreds of people in the United States each year, frequently due to faulty heating systems or blocked ventilation. If a known or suspected malfunction in Hackman's home had come to light, carbon monoxide would be a prime suspect. Yet investigators from the local gas company swiftly declared they found no abnormalities or leaks that would produce such gas in dangerous quantities. Even so, these investigations can be tricky. A door or window opened slightly at a later point, or a partial ventilation fix, might have prevented the lethal concentration from lingering by the time officials arrived. Still, the dog situation cast doubt on this scenario. Typically, if a high concentration of carbon monoxide kills one person in a house, it's likely to kill others who remain in the same enclosed space. The fact that two dogs were found alive undermined the likelihood that carbon monoxide was the culprit. In addition, evidence from the positions of the bodies didn't strongly align with a slow, cumulative poisoning scenario. If Hackman had been suffering from headaches, dizziness, or confusion typically associated with carbon monoxide buildup, would he have made it all the way to the kitchen without anyone calling for help? Why would his wife remain in a different part of the house, presumably oblivious to the unfolding emergency? The lingering mysteries were too numerous and contradicted the typical patterns of carbon monoxide tragedies, leading detectives to pivot away from that hypothesis fairly early in the investigation. The unsettling image of Hackman's wife in the bathroom, surrounded by spilled medication, is arguably one of the more dramatic elements of this case. Investigators collected and cataloged those pills, searching for everything from sleeping aids to potent opioids. Even everyday prescriptions like blood pressure medication can be harmful or fatal when taken in excess. Could it be that she discovered her husband unresponsive and, in a fit of desperation or despair, decided she couldn't go on living? Or was she herself already in medical distress, fumbling her pills before collapsing? Investigators and curious onlookers alike have seized the dog situation as a major clue. Pet behavior can sometimes serve as an early warning system during medical emergencies. Dogs may bark incessantly, scratch doors, or even seek help from neighbors if their owners are incapacitated. The presence of one deceased dog, while two others survived, is peculiar for multiple reasons. The autopsy and toxicology reports on both Gene Hackman and his wife are the linchpins of this investigation. Within days of the discovery, the county coroner's office confirmed that a detailed examination was underway, but cautioned the public that toxicology results can take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer if special tests are required. That timeline, excruciating as it is for those seeking clarity, is standard for many jurisdictions. The complexity of analyzing an older individual's body, potentially riddled with prescription medications and age-related ailments, can further complicate matters. An autopsy might reveal if Hackman suffered a massive stroke, heart attack, or hemorrhage. If that's the case, the scenario of a sudden medical emergency grows more plausible. Similarly, if his wife's autopsy shows no lethal underlying condition, investigators might focus on the medication found scattered around her. Her toxicology results could reveal an overdose, a rare or exotic poison, or perhaps no foreign substances at all, which would be shocking in light of the scene. Though authorities initially stressed that there were no obvious signs of foul play cannot be fully discounted without substantial corroborative evidence. Homicides can be staged to look natural, especially if the perpetrator knows the victims well and plans meticulously. Poisoning remains a possibility, albeit one less common than popular media might suggest. Even so, the advanced age of both individuals might make them more susceptible to lethal interactions between various medications or toxins. Former LAPD detective Nanette Tooby provided a methodical breakdown of how such cases are generally approached. According to Tooby, investigators typically construct a timeline by interviewing family members, neighbors, and any professionals who might have been in contact with the couple, like healthcare workers, mail carriers, or even housekeepers. Since Hackman was somewhat reclusive, the circle of contacts might be limited. Nonetheless, each piece of information could illuminate when they were last seen or heard from. Tooby emphasized that the lack of any calls to 911 stands out. In medical emergencies, especially among older couples, it's not uncommon for one spouse to call for help if the other collapses. The absence of such calls suggests that the wife either did not witness Hackman's collapse or was incapacitated herself. Mainstream media outlets initially approached the story with caution, airing short segments about Hackman's death and praising his cinematic contributions. As the days went on and the mysteries surrounding the case deepened, coverage ballooned into round-the-clock speculation. Cable news broadcasts convened panels of experts, medical examiners, forensic pathologists, psychiatrists, each offering a hypothetical spin on what might have happened. While some coverage aimed for dignity and respect, others veered towards sensationalism, framing the tragedy as if it were a real-life crime novel. Certain tabloids ran lurid headlines like Hollywood Horror House or Hackman's Final Scream. Poisoning remains a staple in detective fiction, from Agatha Christie novels to modern TV procedurals, because it can be stealthy, leaving no outward sign of a struggle. In real life, however, it's far less common. Yet the bizarre circumstances of Hackman's death, complete with an inexplicable canine casualty, spur curiosity about whether a deliberate poisoning might have taken place. Who could have administered it and why? Investigators might look for any unusual substances in the food, water supply, or prescription medications. A caretaker or relative might have had motive or opportunity, though no publicly available data suggests anyone else was present in the home. If we entertain the notion of homicide, was Hackman the target or was his wife? The scattered medication could even be a ruse to mislead law enforcement. If the culprit had staged the scene to resemble a double accident or suicide, that would require a fair amount of planning and knowledge of the couple's daily habits. The bathroom where Hackman's wife was found has become a focal point for investigators. Bathrooms often serve as the place where people manage their daily medicine, weigh themselves, or prepare for bed. If she was found on the floor with pills scattered around, the questions multiply. Was she in the middle of taking the medication? Did she collapse while standing, or did she slump slowly after an overdose? The arrangement of the pills might provide clues. If investigators discover that the caps were off multiple bottles, it might indicate an intentional combination. If only one bottle was open, it might have been a single accidental overdose. Then there's the condition of the bathroom itself. Any sink or shower might hold biological evidence: hair, blood, or vomit. If she vomited due to a medical crisis, that could support the idea of a rapid overdose. If the faucet was running, that might indicate a sudden interruption. And if there were any footprints or smudges on the bathroom surfaces, it might show whether she was alone or if someone else was present. Additionally, in the realm of digital clues, investigators might search for phone or text records in the final hours. Was she frantically texting or calling someone? Or do records show no activity at all? The bathroom setting, albeit mundane, could hold pivotal hints that law enforcement can piece together like a puzzle. One of the more intriguing possibilities is that Gene Hackman and his wife didn't perish at the exact same moment. For instance, if Hackman passed away first, perhaps on a Wednesday, his wife might still have been alive for hours or even days, until eventually succumbing to grief, a medical event, or a self-inflicted overdose. The length of that gap is a pivotal clue. If she lived long enough, one might expect some effort at calling for help or contacting family. Yet some older couples live in near isolation, especially if they value privacy and rarely accept visitors. It's plausible she was too frail or shocked to pick up a phone. Health complications, like dementia or severe arthritis, could hamper her ability to move or think rationally. Even short time gaps, such as a few hours, might be enough to create a misleading scene. If she discovered him lifeless and attempted to take pills in despair, that might explain the scattered medications. Equally, she could have been the first to succumb, leaving Hackman to wander in confusion before he, too, met an untimely death. From a forensic perspective, bodies at different stages of decomposition can illuminate the timeline. Investigators can evaluate rigor mortis, lividity, or insect activity. However, the reported mummification suggests a dry environment that complicates conventional forensic markers. That dryness might preserve tissues in ways that mask or distort usual signs of the timeline. Consequently, investigators rely heavily on external data: phone usage logs, credit card activity, mail collection, and more. On Twitter, some accounts claim inside sources revealing that forbidden substances were found. Reddit threads debate the plausibility of external foul play, with users referencing everything from drug cartels to secret societies. The result is an echo chamber where unvetted rumors can go viral within hours. Simultaneously, well-meaning fans launch online investigations, compiling every snippet of data into elaborate conspiracies. Although these individuals often aim to help, their speculation can muddy the waters. Law enforcement officials occasionally keep certain details under wraps, specifically to filter out false confessions and misleading claims. When those details leak or are misrepresented online, it becomes harder for investigators to separate legitimate tips from noise. Moreover, sensationalist YouTube channels thrive on heightened interest. Some personalities parse every photograph and statement, weaving narratives that implicate neighbors, family members, or even Hollywood executives, all without credible evidence. Although we know Hackman and his wife had medications like thyroid pills, blood pressure prescriptions, and over-the-counter painkillers, the precise details are crucial. A single missed dose of blood pressure medication might pose less risk than accidentally doubling up multiple times. Thyroid imbalances can cause confusion or emotional changes if not managed properly. Painkillers, if opioids, could cause respiratory depression, which is especially dangerous for someone in their 90s. If the wife had a medication that Hackman inadvertently ingested, it could trigger catastrophic physiological reactions. The presence of scattered pills often suggests a typical overdose scenario, but some investigators caution against dismissing the idea of a fast-acting toxin. Certain poisons can cause near instantaneous collapse, leaving victims with no time to seek help. Cyanide, for example, can be ingested or inhaled, leading to rapid loss of consciousness. If Hackman's wife had access to such substances, however unlikely, it might explain why she died so quickly, dropping the pills as she fell. Still, the question resurfaces. Where would she obtain such a toxin? This isn't the Middle Ages. Specialized poisons aren't readily accessible without a complex web of suppliers or a background in chemistry. Alternatively, a potent overdose of prescription meds like fentanyl patches or high-dose opioids can sometimes incapacitate individuals quickly. Investigators will be examining leftover pill counts, measuring drug residues in the blood, and reviewing medication logs from local pharmacies to see if anything is out of alignment. If a toxin is involved, the dog's death might also tie in. Perhaps the poor animal ingested or inhaled it inadvertently. But again, the survival of the other two dogs complicates such theories. The puzzle remains incomplete without the final lab results, which would definitively indicate the presence or absence of exotic poisons. A thorough crime scene investigation extends beyond the immediate discovery of the deceased. Technicians would have dusted surfaces like doorknobs, counters, or medication bottles for latent fingerprints. They might also collect trace evidence, fibers, hairs, or residues that don't match the victims or the dogs. If someone else was present, they might have left footprints, partial handprints, or DNA on a glass of water. The home's security system logs, if any existed, would be scrutinized to see if any doors opened at odd hours. Law enforcement typically also checks the surrounding property, garages, sheds, vehicles, for signs of tampering. If a hidden intruder orchestrated this tragedy, they might have left a clue behind. Alternatively, the search could confirm that no one else entered or left the premises. This physical evidence, or lack thereof, steers the investigation toward or away from foul play. Given that official statements have repeatedly mentioned no signs of forced entry, many experts lean toward an internal explanation: a tragic accident, natural causes, or a mutual decision with calamitous results. The complexity of the case might also prompt the use of advanced forensic methods. These could include specialized chemical sprays that detect minute traces of bodily fluids or gas chromatography analyses that measure airborne compounds. Although some of these techniques are more common in high-profile murder cases, the star power of Gene Hackman may well push the investigative authorities to deploy every available tool to ensure no stone remains unturned. Elderly couples dying under mysterious circumstances is not unprecedented. Law enforcement experts sometimes reference older cases to glean insights. For instance, there have been instances where couples made pacts to end their lives together, leaving behind a note citing failing health or financial ruin. In other situations, one spouse suffered a fatal event, and the other tried in vain to help, expiring from stress or a secondary medical issue. Still, other examples point to carbon monoxide leaks or electrical malfunctions that overcame both individuals simultaneously. Such comparative cases highlight the variety of outcomes. In many, the presence of a note or an arrangement of objects clarifies the couple's intent. However, that's not always so. Some individuals are deeply private, leaving no clear evidence of a pact. Alternatively, a medical coincidence, like both having advanced heart disease, could produce a sequential but near simultaneous passing. Investigators use knowledge of these cases to keep an open mind, realizing how intricate such scenarios can become. Until all data is compiled, they remain cautious about drawing conclusions too early. While the public often envisions detectives as unflappable, real-world investigators aren't immune to emotional strain. Finding beloved icons like Gene Hackman in such heartbreaking conditions can affect even the most seasoned professional. A mixture of sorrow, respect, and a drive for justice or clarity often guides them. Law enforcement officials note the additional pressure that arises from a high-profile case. Media scrutiny means that every action is spotlighted, every statement dissected. Even well-intentioned missteps can result in a wave of public criticism. That heightened attention, however, can also serve as motivation. Investigators understand the outpouring of concern from the actor's fans and the pressing need to provide answers. In many ways, the investigators act as surrogate voices for the thousands who adored Hackman's work, determined to honor his memory by uncovering the truth. Gene Hackman was a public figure, revered for his contributions to cinema. Yet the intricate details of one's death, especially under mysterious circumstances, can be deeply personal. The question of how much information to share with the public becomes a moral and ethical balancing act. On one hand, transparency can quell rumors and provide closure. On the other, exposing intimate medical or emotional details can feel exploitative, not just to the memory of Hackman, but also to any surviving family who must endure the ongoing coverage. Legally, certain documents and autopsy reports can be subject to public records requests, depending on state laws. However, officials may redact sensitive information to protect privacy or the integrity of the investigation. In the interim, the authorities typically release statements that neither confirm nor deny specifics, fueling frustration among those eager for definitive facts. That frustration must be weighed against the possibility that releasing partial evidence could hamper the investigation. For example, by tipping off anyone with relevant knowledge on how to tailor their story. Ultimately, the question of what the public deserves to know is not easily answered. While many argue that Hackman's fans have a legitimate interest in understanding the final chapter of his life, others counter that a measure of dignity and discretion is warranted. The investigators, medical examiners, and courts will collectively decide how much detail sees the light of day and at what stage. An overlooked aspect in tragedies like this can be the psychological toll of aging. Even if Hackman and his wife were physically healthy, the emotional strain of nearing 100 years old can manifest in unexpected ways. The fear of losing a partner, the weight of potential illness, and the isolation from the outside world might accumulate. If one spouse experienced an acute medical issue, it could trigger panic or heartbreak in the other, leading to a fatal chain reaction. Psychologists suggest the concept of dying of heartbreak isn't merely poetic. Broken heart syndrome, or Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, is a well-documented phenomenon where a sudden surge of stress hormones affects the heart's ability to pump blood effectively. It can be fatal, particularly in the elderly or those with underlying cardiac conditions. Could Hackman's wife have experienced such an event upon discovering his lifeless form? The scattered pills might be a red herring, pointing toward an overdose when, in fact, she died from her own abrupt physiological crisis. This psychological dimension does not necessarily conflict with the physical evidence. It could complement it. If the timeline shows that she died shortly after him, investigators must consider heartbreak syndrome as a credible possibility. Of course, only a thorough autopsy examining her heart's condition would confirm or refute this. Meanwhile, the broader context remains. Aging couples often rely on each other for daily routines and emotional support. The sudden absence of one might plunge the other into a catastrophic spiral. Even though the public yearns for immediate clarity, real-world forensic investigations and toxicology analyses move at their own measured pace. The coroner's office must handle not just the Hackman case, but also the array of other daily responsibilities, from conducting autopsies to filing reports for many different incidents in the county. Priority might be assigned, but resources are finite. In particularly complex cases, specialized tests may need to be outsourced to external labs. In the interim, the media cycle will continue to swirl, perhaps even intensifying as new fragments of information emerge. Family members might face additional heartbreak if details are leaked prematurely or twisted out of context. Experts on TV might grow bolder in their speculation, stoking yet more theories. The public, for its part, might grow impatient, fueling a sense of urgency. Yet from a law enforcement standpoint, accuracy is paramount. If an official pronouncement emerges that this was purely a medical tragedy, they'd want to ensure they haven't overlooked a hidden malicious act. Conversely, if evidence points to something more nefarious, they'd need an airtight case, especially given the high-profile nature of the victims. Rushing any aspect could lead to errors or misguided conclusions. So the waiting game is, in effect, a cautious balancing act between thoroughness and the public's craving for resolution. At the core of this mystery stands one simple yet monumental question. How did Gene Hackman and his wife truly die? And why did events unfold in such a strange, haunting manner? Amid the swirl of public mourning, sensational headlines, and intense investigative processes, multiple theories vie for the truth. Perhaps it was a straightforward medical scenario. Hackman collapsed, and his wife, unable to cope or call for aid, followed him in death. Perhaps a toxic confluence of medications overcame them both. Or maybe a yet unseen factor lurks in the background. While the puzzle might appear insurmountable, modern forensics can reveal astonishingly detailed insights. Autopsy findings will clarify whether Hackman's heart or brain gave out. Toxicology screenings can reveal if the wife overdosed or if something more exotic was at play. The dog's autopsy, if performed, may shed light on the presence of ingested toxins. Phone logs, neighbors' testimonies, and security camera footage can refine the timeline. For now, the best course is a solemn patience. The tabloids and rumor mongers will run their cycles, spouting theories from the mundane to the fantastical. Grieving relatives, friends, and fans wait for formal announcements, searching for closure in the face of heartbreak. In the end, the story might prove simpler than the swirling speculation suggests, or it could unravel into an even more astonishing revelation. Regardless of the outcome, Gene Hackman's legacy in film remains unassailable, a body of work that shaped an era and touched countless fans. Though his final chapter is clouded by enigma, the resonance of his career endures, fueling a collective resolve to uncover the truth about his final days. Until those facts are confirmed, all we can do is contemplate the myriad possibilities and acknowledge the fragile nature of life. How even a screen legend can exit this world in a way both perplexing and poignant. The shocking detail about the death of 95-year-old Gene Hackman will indeed leave us speechless until the full story emerges from the ongoing investigation. Whether it proves to be a simple tragedy of old age, a harrowing accident, or a puzzle of deeper complexity, the world will continue to watch, wait, and ponder how such a beloved figure met such an uncertain end. And in that collective anticipation lies the final testament to Hackman's impact on our cultural landscape, ensuring that even in death, his story remains as riveting as any of his greatest cinematic roles.